Welcome to another edition of Toca Backstage. This is Chris Wolf, Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation Executive Director, and it's my pleasure, honor, and just overall happy feeling to be talking to Billy McGuigan from Yesterday and Today, the Interactive Beatles Tribute, which is coming up at the Armstrong Theater April 25th, Saturday at 8 p.m., and you're not going to want to miss it. Billy, thanks so much for taking the time.
Great to be here, Chris.
So we had you, we had the show like 3-4 years ago, and people.
I think it's 4 years ago.
Yeah. The one comment that I heard was, "Damn, I wish I knew they were. If I wish I knew they were this good, so I would have brought more people." And the thing about the show that I think people don't get is you're not the typical Beatles tribute.
No.
Explain your show.
Yeah, so I mean, it would almost be maybe a little bit too much to say we're the anti-Beatles tribute show, because we don't dress up like the Beatles in any way. We're not concerned about what they wore on what album cover or what their hair looked like at a certain point. What we really care about are people's experience with the music. So when people come into the theater, we ask for their name. They have like a little request card set up. It's pretty simple. You know, we ask for their name, their favorite Beatles song, and the reason why they chose the song, which is probably the most important part. And then we just take all of those requests, throw them in a basket, and we pick 3 out, and those are our openers. And then throughout the show, we just kind of reach in and go. So I call the person's name, they identify themselves, and then I tell the name of the song, the crowd applauds, and then we tell the reason why they choose the song, which somehow, and this wasn't my initial intent when I came up with that idea, it just brings everybody more together. And the fact that we're not trying to be the Beatles, we're dressing like the Beatles, we're just being ourselves, which is huge Beatles fans. The only difference between me and another huge Beatles fan is I've spent the past 12 years trying to learn every Beatles song. So that's what we do. So we're ready to play anyone at any time, and the audience completely dictates the show. And I think that's why people go, had I known that they weren't going to be cheesy, I would have brought everybody, because then we could have all, been a part of what happens during the show, which is special every single time. Because in the 12 years that we've been doing it and the 1,000 shows that we've done, not one has ever been even remotely close to the one before.
Well, and that's the thing that when I first learned about the show, doing what we do, it's like, we go to conferences, we hear rumors, and I kept hearing, "Oh, you should check out the show. You should check out the show." I finally went to go see it, and I asked the theater person, the person who booked it, I said, "So, do they really pick? Just how did that work?" And she goes, "No, it was totally off the cuff." So when I brought the show into Torrance, I was like, I watched backstage happenings, and I'm like, wow, they really come up with the set list that night, and that's just blew my mind.
It seems more daunting than it actually is. I think I always tell somebody the best part about the show at this point is for the past 6 years we've had the same band. And the 6 years prior to that, we had about 3 or 4 different lineups. And so when somebody new would come, you'd kind of start over. And you go back to those 50 songs that you can play. And then, and then somebody else leaves and you're back down to that. Well, in the 6 years, the ball is weird. It just keeps getting smaller and easier. It's like, well, it doesn't really matter what somebody calls, because we genuinely know them all. So it's not, I don't know, there's a tight wire act to it, which I love, because anything could fail. I mean, we're not tracking. We're just playing the songs, going, and it's exciting, man. And it's the best music, I think. I think the Beatles music, as my brother Matthew say, it's kind of for everybody. Even if you're a casual fan or don't think that you like them, if you came to this show, I think we would show you why people like the Beatles so much, and you'd walk away going, man, I appreciate their catalog a lot more than I did before.
Well, and that's the thing, I think, is, having presented Beatles tributes before, we've, I've done the ones with the costumes and all that. You have like grandparents coming with, full generations of families coming, and these little kids who are just all as enthusiastic about the catalog as the grandparent.
Yeah, that's kind of what is really cool about the Beatles music. Whereas, you know, I think if I play Buddy Holly music as well, and that crowd is not getting any younger. You know, I mean, that it's not like you're seeing an influx of younger people going, I'm really, really interested. I mean, it's great music, the 50s music and Buddy's music in particular. But with the Beatles music, it seems like every year something happens and their fan base expands. You know, Across the Universe movie came out and people are like, oh, I love these songs. And now the Yesterday movie has come out. Abbey Road is 50 years old. It's a #1 album again. So our audience keeps getting younger and the show keeps getting cooler, not because of us, just because our audiences are so cool, you know?
Well, and that's the thing for people may be watching this saying, that guy looks really familiar, but I didn't go to the Beatles tribute before. Well, it's because we also presented your show, Rave On,
right.
a couple years back, which, by the way, how you were still standing after the second act blew my mind, because you literally laid it all out there. And for those of you who didn't see Rave On, you may also recognize him from the season brochure cover, which, by the way, we had nothing to do with. I give all the graphics to the designer, and she picks whatever one she wants, and that spoke to her.
That's not true. You know I bribed you to do that.
So how you know the Beatles music? You obviously have a great affection for it. How did this show come to be?
I think one other important thing about this show is that it's a family show. I think even more than the guys that dress up, which is cool. I mean, you can bring your kids to that show, obviously. And I go to them. I'm not downgrading them at all. But our show is really unique because my brothers are involved in it. So my brothers, Ryan and Matthew, are in the show. And we started this with our dad kind of when we were little kids. We had this family tradition kind of out of being poor, that we couldn't afford to go to movies or go to dinner or pay putt-putt even. We would stay at home and our dad taught us these songs. I think that started probably when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Like seriously teaching us, like, Billy, you sing this part, Ryan, you sing this part, Matthew, you sing this part. And it was something we thought every other family did. We didn't know any different. And then our dad unfortunately passed away when we were pretty young. I was 21, my brother Ryan was 18, and my brother Matthew was 15. And this music, I mean, I don't really know how to explain it, Chris. It just, I'd always loved it and knew that I loved it probably because of my dad. But then we lost him and we would sing this music still, and it was like he was with us, you know? And I think people get that when they listen to a John Lennon song. It's like, oh, he's never really going to go away, because in the echoes of these songs, John is still with us. George is still with us. And that happened with my dad. And I just knew that we weren't the only ones that felt that way. So when I was putting the show together, that's why I wanted to know why people love the music, because I know why we love it. It's really, really important to us. It's kind of what kept our family together. It was the inheritance that our dad gave us. I mean, Chris, we grew up eating government cheese, drinking powdered milk, and Kick cereal. That was our everyday. And to see where we are now because of this little tradition our dad started, it's really important. And that's why I love their music. It really reminds me of my dad, and it's really the glue that's kept our family together. So that's why I love it.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, not only just the Beatles music, but pretty much any music, people can identify periods of their life through song. I mean, you know, mention a song from when I was growing up, and I'm like, well, yeah, that was the day that I did X, Y, and Z. But I think because the Beatles have such a grand catalog and they've been around for so long, and it's just almost they have a life of their own. People really respond to their music and can identify. It's like I remember growing up as a child doing, you know, shows in my living room for my parents, and Strawberry Fields was my big dance number. It's like, but I think it's really cool that you guys do this, and it's. Do you still open the show with the story about your dad?
We closed the first act, telling the story, you know, because we like to surprise people a little bit. It's kind of the turn in our show. I mean, it appears that the gimmick of our show is the request aspect and the not dressing. I feel like the gimmick of our show is, once we tell you why we love this music, after we've spent an hour establishing why our audience loves their music, once we, you know, and you got to go, oh my God, these three guys love this. You know, we have a full band of 6 people, by the way. I should also mention that. But when you see the love and the passion that my brothers and I put in it, you have to kind of wonder why, I think. I'm like, why is, you know, they're not of that age. They're, you know, I'm the oldest, I'm 44. The Beatles had broken up when I was born. But then we hook them with that story. And once we tell you about our dad and this little tradition that we started, I think that's the gimmick of our show, that's inescapable. I think even if you're that casual Beatles fan, it doesn't matter, because we're not playing it because they were the Beatles. We're playing the music because of how it's affected people like us and like you and anybody that's heard their music.
Well, I think also there's, and I honestly think that with you and your brothers, there's a sense of authenticity to your performance that, I mean, at some point, the Beatles shows are the Beatles shows, and I agree they're great. We all go to them, and they will live on forever. But at some point, their set list is their set list is their set list, and their costume changes, and it's almost like they do it by rote, some of them.
Right.
And they still give it their all, but there's not that passion, and excitement from, well, we don't know what we're doing next, so let's find out. Right. So I just think that's something that people can share together as the audience, which I think is a brilliant concept from my perspective.
It was luck, man. It was luck, Chris. I mean, it really started. We had a band called Yoko's Fault before this started. Well, we just wanted to play some Beatles songs, and we played at, we had a new restaurant here in Omaha called Cheeseburger in Paradise, Jimmy Buffett's place. And we played a couple of gigs there. And I just told people, like, hey, if you want to make a request, just send it up on a napkin. This is 13, 14 years ago. And they were sending up song requests, but they were telling me why. Like, they weren't just, they couldn't just tell me why, they couldn't just tell me the name of the song. They had to tell me why they love it. I think that's kind of how it is with everybody. Like, what's your favorite Beatles song? Well, it's this. And immediately people will tell you why.
Right.
And I think there's something to that, because a Beatles song is really a soundtrack. Even, I don't know, I mean, you have to be a big Buddy Holly fan. I use Buddy Holly as a reference because I play his music a lot. But I think you have to be a big Buddy Holly fan to really appreciate the breadth of his catalog and the depth of his music and the effect that it left all these years later on rock. But with the Beatles, I don't even know if you need to be a music fan to appreciate their music. I mean, there's just something to it. It's bubbly, it's poppy, it's perfect, it's psychedelic, and they're special, man. And I just think that I don't know, I didn't mean to call you man.
Sorry, man.
Babe. Hey, babe, they're real special. And we, you know, yesterday and today, what I love about it, I think the difference between it and other Beatles shows is there's heart to it. We really get at the heart of what the Beatles music was about, which is not about what they looked like. And as we all know, they didn't love what they looked like. They didn't care what they looked like, or, you know, that's why they did Sgt. Pepper. They were like, we don't want to be those guys. We want to be a different band. And I think if one ever came to see our show, if Paul or Ringo ever came, I think this would be the one they'd be like, wow, this kind of captures what we were going for, and we didn't even know we were going for it.
Well, and it's interesting too that you referenced Buddy Holly, who, I mean, I'm a fan of his music as well, but his time span was so limited as far as the music.
18 months, yeah.
But the Beatles kind of are almost, I mean, they went through a number of reiterations. It was like starting in, what was it, 64?
I mean, that's when they came to America, February of 64, and broke up in January of 70. When you look at what they did in that time frame, I mean, that's unparalleled in modern music, other than maybe Michael Jackson, who was able to reinvent himself a couple of times. What they did in 6 years is nobody's even come close to that.
But do you think it also because the world was changing so drastically during that time?
I mean, I always, people say, what's special about the Beatles? As you know, as a musician or performer, what do you think was special about them where we're still talking about them and they're still relevant? They were like little sponges, you know, growing up in Liverpool. And I just went to Liverpool for the first time this summer, and you can feel it. It feels like a Boston or a New York, because it's a harbor town, you know, a
Right.
seaport. And there's an attitude to the people, and they're funny, and there's a sense of humor, and that all comes from all those people coming in. You know, they're getting this American music, but they're also getting skiffle and country, and they just took it all in and spit it back to us in a way that was more palatable than anything else we'd ever heard. Like, they took our music, like Clapton did with the blues. Clapton took it and made it palatable to not just a small sect of people, but like, hey, check this out. These are my heroes. This is who I love. You should love them too. And I think the Beatles do that without even telling you. Like, you can hear Smokey Robinson, Elvis, and Chet Atkins, and all of these influences, and it's influenced all the music that's come after it. You hear everything you like in there. There's nothing. I don't know who else does that. I wish I could do it. You know? Yeah.
I have to say, it's really fun talking to somebody who is so passionate about what they do.
I appreciate that, Chris. Yeah, I love it. Maybe that just comes from being a poor kid, you know? I never, ever, ever thought I would be doing this, you know, into my 40s or even at all. So
That's right. I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing when I was
yeah,
a kid either.
it's great, right? Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting because I mean, having spoken to several artists who do tribute shows, like I spoke to one gentleman who did a great tribute show, and it's like that's all he does is that one, and it's not like he has any musical aspirations outside of doing that one character.
Right.
Do you and your brothers do other stuff? I mean, I know you do Buddy Holly, but
Yeah, we have, so our full group, so we're Rave On Productions, right? So there's I think there's fully about 10 of us within the company. And in that, we can do about 6 different shows. So, for example, our keyboard player in Yesterday and Today is Tara Vaughn. She has her own show, She Rocks, which is like the women of rock. We do a show of mine, which is called the Pop Rock Orchestra, which is kind of like all the music that I love, which is 50s, 60s, 70s music with a rock and roll orchestra behind us. Yeah, so we're definitely not pigeonholed. I mean, I think we're always kind of trying to see what interesting can we do next. And I don't, you know, I started as a tribute artist, and I felt so pigeonholed, Chris. I mean, like, well, you're just Buddy Holly. It's like, I mean, I happened into that. I was a fledgling cover band guy who, you know, I went to college to be an actor, and it didn't work out. I was like, well, here I am, 28, my career's over. And I got cast in a community theater production of the Buddy Holly story, and here I am. I mean, it just, you know, trajected everything. And everybody was like, oh, you're Buddy Holly. It's like, I'm not. I love the Beatles. And so I did that. And then, I don't know, I think the interesting thing about our business, which you and I talk about a lot, I think one of the cool things about it is there are a lot of opportunities if you're ready to take them. You know, a lot of doors will open. And I think what happens is we would go to places, people like, what else can you do? We would all kind of huddle up like, okay, guys, what else can we do? Sure, we can do that. I don't know. We have an incredible group band. I can't really call us a band. We're beyond that. It's just like a family unit that we just love playing together and playing whatever music comes our way.
well, and that sort of leads me to another question, that part of what the foundation does, and it's sort of I guess, personal thing for me, is we try to encourage young artists who are, you know, wanting to make their start. We try to mentor them and give them opportunities. And I always like to ask people I talk to, from your perspective, because I have to say I'm in awe of what you do, because most of the artists that I deal with their agents or managers or, you know, other people. But when I deal with you guys, it's like there's a unit there that I'm talking directly. It's like a conduit to book you. and so it's almost like it's not as segregated, separated as like a typical performing arts person. But as a touring professional, what words of advice would you give to a young person?
When I was starting out, so I military kid, right, as I mentioned before, and I started really getting into musical theater in high school, and I don't know, I've always looked at this career as any opportunity that came my way, I just went for it full-heartedly. And I think a lot of times artists are really insecure, and I am the first person to tell you that I'm very insecure about my talents and what I can do. But there comes a point where you just have to go for it, and you have to be all in. Because I've just seen the road and or this business eat people alive that are half-heartedly doing it because they feel that they should do it, or somebody once told them that it's kind of a calling. Because I've tried to walk away a couple of times because the business is, it took, as somebody that does it because they love it, it's hard to figure out that show business is a business. You know what I mean? Like some of your friends aren't really your friends. They're just like, oh, what can you do for me? But when I got out of it, even for a month or two, it's a calling. It's one of those things that I know that this is what I'm supposed to do, and I want to be attached to it any way that I can. And that's why I kind of built a business around it. So our company is, the head of our company is Kate that you deal with, but I'm right next to her at any time. So we're a unit, and we get through this world together.
Well, and it's funny because I remember after we did Rave On, and I had patrons coming, oh, bring him back, that was great. And then I spoke to Kate, I think at the next conference, and she goes, yeah, well, he's not going to do that anymore. He doesn't want it. And then at the following conference, it's like, well, it's back on our books, so we're doing Rave On again. I'm like, okay.
If you, and again, I just look at myself as Buddy Holly. I'm double his age at this point. And people go, oh, you don't look. It's like, yeah, but I feel it. But yeah, I'm very selfish. It's not really about the audience. I get that thrill of performing. I love it so much. And for a long time fought it. It's like, it's because I can do it. As I was telling you, I was about 90% in, and then I walked away. It was for a month, Chris. And then I'm coming back, and I'm just going for it. So.
Well, what happened during that month?
I got a job. We had a break. We had a break in our schedule, and I thought, you know what? I've got a college degree that I don't use. I'll just give it a shot. And I tried it for a month, and I'm so grateful to the person that gave me the opportunity. Like, just adore. Hey, just try it. You can walk away. No harm, no foul. And I didn't walk. I ran away. I ran right back to this. It's like, oh, okay.
Well, some people aren't meant for desks, I guess.
I am, yeah. You see me on stage, you understand why I'm not.
Yeah.
Desk. Yeah. I was that way in the office, and it drove people crazy. And me crazy.
So any plans for other things coming up? I mean, I know you have you're doing a show now and you're doing a tour, but other shows that you guys have in the fire?
We're going to start working on a couple more things, but right now we started doing cruise ships, Chris, which is, part of our thing is we're also a band, that's why I said it's more of a family than a band, but one of our entities is a band. We say we play arena rock. And a cruise ship called and they're like, hey, would you be interested in doing this? And we're like, they have a reputation in our industry, like, oh, you're either the here or, And it has been heaven for us being able to see the world and be headliners on these ships. So we're kind of doing that right now, seeing the world. And when we come out of that, we're going to put a new show together. Don't exactly know what it'll be yet, but something fun.
Well, and I have to say, I'm so grateful that you actually toured this show, the yesterday and today, because I could actually see this like at a casino in Vegas or something as like a long running thing, but it's.
Yeah. And we've headlined there, and there's an energy there that really works for this show. And that, it's one of those things, again, I never thought I would headline Las Vegas, and this is the show that brought me there. And I thought, oh, how is this going to work? People are going to be completely trashed. They're not going to get the concept. And yeah, they grasp it. But I still love seeing the world. And I don't know I don't know how much longer that'll last. I hope it keeps going, but you know, without friends like you, what do we have? Right?
I don't know. You seem to be doing pretty okay without me.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, we are out of time. Billy, thank you so much for taking the time. I do appreciate it. And just a reminder, if you get our season brochure, you can take Billy home with you. Yesterday and today, April 25th, 8 o'clock at the Armstrong Theater. Billy, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
I appreciate it.